subject, well, when we deal with this subject, we need to keep in mind that as far as God's concerned, our attitudes and how we feel doesn't affect God one little bit. Are you with? Boy, it got quiet, didn't it? I thought about this in the area of Noah's day. As we're going to Jeremiah, but in Noah's day, did you know that the attitude of the people in Noah's day killed unnumbered of little kids? So what are you talking about? How many kids died in the flood?
Mm-hmm.
Because of people's, I'll put it this way, because of people's ignorance towards God.
Amen. See,
we've got this mentality that we're so afraid of offending someone. How many of you know what I'm talking about? It used to be when I grew up, you said what was right. It didn't matter what anybody thought. You said what was right. Now, the idea wasn't you weren't there to offend anybody. But we've got a culture that if you tell the truth and someone doesn't like it, they get offended by that. See, I think what's happened in a lot of churches, that there are many churches that follow that same pattern. Don't say anything that's going to offend anybody. See, I'll tell you what, that we deal with this is God's opinion is a whole lot more important than our opinion. When you get to Jeremiah, very interesting, and we'll be in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse number 25. That's where we're going to be going, but just as a reminder of this topic we've been covering, we've been, I think, 3 weeks already, and Jamie was asking me, any particular, I said, we'll continue to study. But remember in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse number 31, there was a question, or there was a statement, O generation, see ye the word of the Lord, have I been a wilderness unto Israel, a land of darkness? Wherefore say my people, we are lords, we will continue no more with thee. That word lords means we're going to be the dominant one. We're basically going to say how we feel. Doesn't matter what God thinks. In fact, if you put yourself in Jeremiah's position, Jeremiah was ordained by God to plead with Judah to return to God. He told Jeremiah he would be hated for speaking the truth. He denounced Judah's sin as a result, and I want you to see this, but as a result, he was persecuted, number one, by his family. He was also persecuted by the hometown that he lived in, and he was also persecuted by these religious leaders. And the reason was because these groups of people were so religiously perverted, their eyes were blind to the truth. And the truth angered them. Just because we talk about religious people doesn't mean that they were holy people. I'll deal with that just a little bit. Basically, he was a loner in a wickedly religious world. And I'm going to give you a footnote. Pastors that speak the truth, many of them are loners among the people that they're with. Amen. I've seen that happen many times. And in fact, I said this, and I use this as an example. When you would have people say, preacher, give us what we need. What you need and what you want is two different things. Are you following me? And many times what we need as God's people are things we don't want to hear. I'm going to give you a footnote. Years ago, and I don't know if Brother Joe remembers this, but Brother Clyde Lanier, and I keep mentioning him, boy, I miss him. That doesn't mean I don't have respect for these other preachers. But years ago, Brother Clyde Lanier preached a message at the national meeting in Orlando, and what he said was not well received by many Baptist preachers that were there. Number one, he said this, he stated this, he said, we have spiritual amnesia, we've forgotten who we are. Number two, we're infected with ecclesiastical myopia. Whoever we are glad we're not like them. He said, we have no definable doctrine, everyone's been left to his or her opinion. Thus saith the Lord has been replaced with, it seems to me, and there has been a staggering loss of Baptist identity. He said we create shallow worship services geared to the applause of men rather than the praise of God. And we're awash on the sea of pragmatism, whatever works is right. Religiously, as Baptists, we're in such a mess and we don't even realize it. I told Sister Angela, and of course she deals, and anybody that's been in the medical field knows this, that sometimes your body can hurt. Mm-hmm. You get used to it so long that you just live with it. I'm finding that. And things that hurt, pretty soon there's nothing they can do, but you live with it. And pretty soon that becomes the norm. Are y'all following me? Mm-hmm. Religion gets to be like that. And by the way, if something's hurting on you, there's something wrong somewhere. Are you following me? You can live with it. Religiously, what happens is, for the most part, religious people have been used to things being so wrong, they've gotten used to it and they live with it. A 30-minute session of hearing preaching occasionally has been the norm. Offerings and tithes are the leftovers. Retention on our feelings and the average Baptist has never led, I'm going to put this, the average Baptist has never led one person to Jesus Christ personally. That's the average, brother. By the way, if you never have led someone to Christ and you ever do, that's no feeling like that. Mm. Modern versions of the Bible are being the norm, and the reason is people don't know the difference. There are differences. Amen. Thank you, brother. There are differences. Well, I want a Bible that's easier to read. What may be easier to read may not be easier to understand. Mm-hmm. For the most part, God's people have gotten used to perverted holiness. Amen. And they don't know the difference. The area of holiness, and I'm going to give you the area of holiness. And again, find the place in Jeremiah 2:25. But the area of holiness is the word hagios. And it means physically pure, morally pure, and religiously pure. And that's by God's standard, not your standard or my standard. 1 Peter chapter 1, verse number 13 through 16 says something like this. Wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind. And basically, when he said gird up the loins, it's kind of like the men of that day would have long robes, and they would pick them up, tie them around the waist so that they could run fast, they could work better, and they wouldn't be tripped up even in battle. And so when he says gird up the loins of your mind, basically he's telling believers, always be ready to serve and to be what God would have you to be. Mm-hmm. But gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is brought to you by the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, not fashion yourself according to the former lusts of your ignorance, but as he which hath called you to be holy, so be holy in all manners of conversation. That word conversation is the walk of life. Because it's written, be ye holy, for I am holy. The result of the absence, and we'll get to Jeremiah in just a moment, because this is putting you kind of the introduction. Where we are today is what happened to the time of Israel and Judah in that day. But the result of the absence of holiness will be this. Number one, the word will be unclear. Worship will be clouded by sin. No value to what a believer does religiously. There's no value to it. In other words, God doesn't accept it. And it would cause God's people to err. The absence of holiness in the life of a believer will cause the wrong perception and attitude of worship. I like that song, brother. Crown him with many crowns. Have you ever heard that song before? Wonderful song. I was. By the way, I wasn't ignoring the singing, but I tell you what, I was praying while I was hearing. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, you follow me? When we preach the words, that'll be an expression of what's going on in the heart. Amen. But what happens is, and I'm going to tell you this, what happens, and I hear this at churches, the dress code. You ever, what's your dress code? Anybody heard that in churches? Yep. You'll see it. What's our dress code? The normal thing in the dress code of many churches is religious costumes. Mm-hmm. Oh man. Do you might know what a costume is? A costume, and I looked this up in the 1955 Webster's Dictionary, the year that I was born. Mm. But a costume is clothing worn at one time. It's a masquerade, and I add this. It's something used to make the wearer to appear as something that he's really not.
That's right.
And did you know we talk about this? Did you know the area of holiness is an important factor for even not only giving, but the Lord's Supper?
Mm-hmm.
Man. So we're going to go to the book of Jeremiah. You've been wondering when I was going to go there. But I'm going to right now. We're going to where we left off, and look at verse number 25, if you would. I'm just what I want you to do this morning is, as we are bringing this, and this is a study. I don't know any other way of bringing Jeremiah than to not to give you what I assume he's saying, but I want to give you what he's really saying to the people in his day, what Jeremiah is telling them through God as he's giving them inspiration. And this as an example, you might say, what good is the Old Testament? Very much so. We can learn by it. If we don't understand the past, we have no idea where we're going in the future. But look at verse number 25. Notice this, and he said this, withhold thy foot from being unshod. That term unshod is unsandaled. See, the idea of sandal was the area of having sandaled foot. That kept your foot from getting injured. Spiritually, he's saying this, don't get to the place where you will get injured. He didn't want him to be injured spiritually. Then he said this, and thy throat from thirst. You see that term thirst? Don't withhold thy throat from thirst. And that term thirst had to do with this, having a desire for God.
Yeah.
You know, where Jesus told the woman at the well, if you drink of this water. See, we need a thirst for God. We need a hunger for His Word. And just because you may be here and I'm here, that doesn't mean that I am thirsting for God. I may be doing what I think is right at this time period. You know, well, Sunday comes and this is what I've always done. Mm-hmm. See, I was raised up as a child, I mean, way back, even younger than Kenneth, I was raised up in church, but I was never taught what it meant to have a thirst for God, a desire for God. He used this other term right here. Look at this verse number 25. He said, but thou saidst, this is what you're saying, there is no hope. Now, I looked at that term hope. That means this, that what they're saying is this. They are saying that we have more desire for the hopeless path of idolatry. Mm-hmm. They're saying we have no hope. That hope wasn't found in Christ. That hope was not found in Jesus and God. That hope was found in idolatry, which there was no hope. He said, for I have loved strangers, and after them will I go. Strangers, when we deal with strangers, we're talking about perverted religion. The leaders of perverted religion. And I would say this, that in the society we live in today, you can go on almost street corner in Smyrna, and people never question why they believe what they do. There's an old rule that says this, ignorance is what?
Bliss.
No excuse. We've got the B-I-B-L-E, and anything we need to find out how God expects us to do and how to worship, it comes from this book. 66 books. It's not about what I say. It's not about what, and by the way, it's not about what a preacher says on television. It's about what God says. All I can be is a mouthpiece. And he said this in verse number 20, and he said, strangers, I would go. That's what Judah was saying. Strangers, I would go. Basically, that's why we have that term when God becomes a wilderness, when He becomes no use. Now, he says something a little bit further in verse number 26. As a thief is ashamed when he's found, so is the house of Israel ashamed. And they, their kings, their princes, their priests, and their prophets, saying to a stock, an idol, Thou art my father, and a stone thou hast brought me forth. For they have turned their backs unto me, and not their faces. But in time of their trouble they will say, Arise and save us. I'm going to give you something. We need to be aware, we need to be very much afraid of depending on our finances to get us through. We must be very careful about saying this is going to help me get through, or this is going to provide, or I'm going to go to work tomorrow, and that's what's going to pay my bills. If you've had your bills paid, don't get to the place where you say, man, I did that for work. Listen, you have what you have because God's been good to you.
Amen.
He can turn any supply off if He wants.
That's right.
But people, what they were doing is this: they were saying, this will help me out, that will help me out, and it's not God that's done that. And he goes on a little bit further when he said this: they turned their backs unto me. Now, when it came down for the temple worship, they would have their religious piosity. God's not a bit interested in that. But notice the next thing. But he said in verse number 28, but where are thy gods that thou hast made thee? Mm-hmm. Let them arise, and let them, and if they can save thee in the time of trouble, for according to the number of thy cities, thy gods, O Judah. I looked at this. Did you know many believers, and I'm not saying the lost, and this is very interesting, but many believers have no time for God until trouble comes. Mm-hmm. Are you following me? Yeah. Only when trouble comes, then guess what happens? They won't be faithful until trouble comes, and they want God to bail them out. Mm-hmm. You see where Jeremiah's going with this? Everything's fine. When everything's fine, and I'm telling you what we need to realize is America has been a blessed nation. I said this before, we have more than we ever did when I was a kid growing up. And I think what we're seeing is God is blessing this nation to see how faithful God's people will be in the time of plenty. How faithful they would be to Him. He can shut it off real quick. Now, by the way, if you notice, and I saw this on the news, how many people have gotten upset because some terrorists got killed?
That's right.
Are you following me? I believe what's happening is more and more of the things that will kill America and are killing America has been being accepted. And God will allow the enemy to come in. And by the way, if the enemy takes over, you won't have those things to take care of you. Mm-hmm. Are you following me? Are you with me? Boy, this week need to be. And so basically the question was, when you have a time of trouble, are these things going to help you out? I said this, and this is very interesting, but I said this, and it's an old saying of mine: if you're down to a chicken bone,
be thankful.
Be thankful.
What?
Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
God has been
good to you.
Good to you. If you're down to a little, you got to be crazy, man. Guess where that chicken bone came from?
The chicken.
God, the chicken that God made.
God made the chicken. Thank you. God made the chicken. He provided that. I thought about this and something wonderful last night. I had some of you turn your nose up at it. I had an alligator tail last night.
Oh.
I love it.
Oh.
I love it, man. I love it. And in fact, I went to Uncle Bill's, what is it? Uncle Bud. I was talking to Chris and asked me, "What you doing tonight?" I said, "Well, just hanging around the house, and I'll go get me a sandwich." So I go to Subway, and I got me a foot-long cold cut combo. Foot-long. I was eating that. I got a call from Michael. He said, "Dad, what you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm at the house." He said, "Would you like to go to Uncle Bud's?" "Oh, yeah." I get there, and I'm looking, and the thing that pointed, you didn't have to ask me twice. I saw it. It was alligator tail. Mm. And they had beans and onions. You might say, "Man, that's nasty stuff." See, gators eat everything.
Amen.
Stop signs, car tags, dogs, cats, whatever it is. And I can tell if it's done right, and it tasted good. Mm-hmm. But guess who provided that?
God.
God provided that. You understand me? You don't you forget that. But I'm going to tell you something. Alligator tail will never get me out of a situation like God can.
Amen.
Man, I'm telling you, we need to be aware of this. That whatever you have today, you may not have tomorrow. God can take it that quick. Mm-hmm. Your health. I got to think. Folks, listen to me very carefully. See, my health is not going to be around all the time. Now, I'm going to say something and be very aware of this. See, my health is not always going to be around. I've already had a bunch of my schoolmates that were younger than me. They've already passed away. You know, had one just New Year's. She passed away. Karen Walker. I brought her name up. She had a brain bleed, and I don't know what befalls me, what will befall me. I don't know whatever. But sooner or later, God's going to take me out. The question is you're going to have to find a pastor, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's where I'm going here. We need to see, God can provide the finances so you can bring a pastor here. Are you following me? He can do that. But keep in mind, I'm not trying to sound like the doom and gloom. I'll be 66 in just a few months. I'm 65, yeah. I said this, and it's interesting. I got the thing from Social Security, and I'm zippity-doo-dah hopping all the way. I said, on there it said, full age of retirement, 66 and 2 months. Man, that's next year, yeah, man. I may not be around then. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
It won't be secure. It won't be Social Security to get me through. I'm going to tell you something. It'll be God who'll get me through.
Amen.
Are you following me? So the idea that we have things that's going to get us through, that's not the issue. The idea they had was, whatever was around them, that became their God. Look at the next thing. Verse number 29. He said, wherefore, will you plead with me? Ye all have transgressed against me, saith the Lord. By the way, he was trying to get them, don't point the finger at everybody else what they're doing. See, I'll be honest with you. The biggest problem we have in America is not going to be the homosexual issue. By the way, there's two issues on the homosexual issue. Is this, number one, it is a spiritual issue and it's a mental issue.
Mm-hmm.
I heard one and said this, I was born in the wrong body. You gotta be nuts, man.
Mm-hmm.
You were born in the body God gave you.
Amen.
You didn't make that decision. I mean, my body, Chris going like, my body's not perfect, but I'm glad I got it.
Amen.
You get that? And so whatever God does, He doesn't make a mistake. I heard that. You're hearing more of this, people changing because they feel like they were born in the wrong body. They got some problems, man. And by the way, that kind of attitude, whether or not realize it, are beginning to seep its way, and a lot of people call themselves God's people.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the next thing. In vain. Verse number 30. In vain I have smitten your children. They receive no correction. Your own sword hath devoured your prophets like a destroying lion. You see this, in vain I have smitten your children. I'll tell you one thing and keep in mind is this, that my children are grown. I've got two blood children, Michael and Heather. But then I've got some that were married in the family, Nick and Samantha. They were married in the family. But did you know this, that whatever God decides to do, He can do that? He can take my children. He can take my grandchildren if that'll get me to wake up. But when this idea here that we talk about this, He said in vain. He said, whatever I've done, it hasn't got you shook up. I like that study we had when bad things seem to happen, whatever. If you look at it on the right perspective, in God's perspective, what we think is bad, it's a good thing if God does that.
Mm-hmm.
I said this some time ago. I was behind the pulpit, and I was telling how God could get you through anything, whether it's cancer, whatever. And it wasn't long until God tested me on that. 11 years ago, something like that. I go to the doctor and was hurting, and go back for follow-up. Said, Mr. Dixon, you have a malignant tumor size of a football. We've got to do more. Cancer. And did you know I had to learn that God was using it? It was not a bad thing. God was using that as a good thing to minister to others and to show me how I put this right here, how very weak my body can be. The strength, have you ever heard this? The strength is the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But He said this, in vain I've smitten your children. It's like this. I've done everything to get your attention. And you get to a place where I've even got the areas to where I've allowed these foreign pagan countries to come in. They've defeated, they have done whatever they can, and all you've done is you have exactly killed the prophets. That's a dangerous. See, the world we live in, The truth has never been a what I would call a accepted thing. If I've gotten used to something and I like it, don't tell me I'm doing wrong. But you ever heard people say this? Don't try to tell me how to live my life. You ever heard that? Don't try to tell me how to live my life. Your morals are not my morals. By the way, my morals are not your morals. My morals are God's morals. Don't do this, it'll kill you, you know. Don't tell me. A lot of kids, it's interesting. It's a lot of kids out there. And I remember growing up, there was a lot of things, and you've been there too. The mom and dad tried to tell you something. Oh, you don't know. Are you fine? Are you what?
Amen.
Don't try to tell me how to live my life, Mom. Yeah, you understand this? This is my bedroom. You can't come in my bedroom. Guess who pays for your bedroom? Mom and Daddy pay for that bedroom.
Right.
I like to see a lot of parents do this. When kids get like that, don't tell me how to live my life, Mom and Daddy. Fine. Go move out with what you came in with. Guess what you came in with?
Naked.
Your naked body, you know, everything you have. Boy, that's being cruel. And boy, you did that, some of them wouldn't. Boy, can you imagine? That's the attitude that these people have. I see Kenneth and Kate. I got some good grandkids. But you know they could get really snippy about Mom and Dad telling them not to do whatever. Yeah, they're getting there, you know. But we keep in mind that it seems like God's trying to deal with them as a loving parent. I've done this, and I've done this, and I have even brought the enemy into your camps, and all you've done is you killed the prophets. Jesus talked about this back in his ministry. He said, Jerusalem, and by the way, remember he weeps 2 times. How many of you remember that? He looks over Jerusalem. He said, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how I would have gathered unto myself as a mother hen with her chicks, but you would not." He went on further and said this. He said, "And I send you prophets, but you have stoned them and killed them." They tried to give you the truth. Look at verse number 31. This is where we were. "O generation, see then the word of the Lord. Have I been a wilderness? Have I been uncaring?" You ever look at National Geographic when you talk about the desert? See, God should never be a wilderness unto you. But when you don't turn unto Him, He's the same thing as He's not useful. He wants to be an oasis.
That's right.
You know, you get that? He wants to be an oasis. He said, "Oh, generation, have I been a wilderness unto Israel? Have I been darkness and not light?" But you're saying this, but we're Lord's. I rule my, how shall I say it? I rule my destiny. You don't rule your destiny. How many of you had unexpected situations that have come in your life without a moment's notice? I know, it's like all of a sudden. And I've learned this one thing. I was thinking about this morning. Tawana's on her way from Florida. Do you know my life could change real quick like this? See, I don't rule my world. And I should never get to the place where I rule my worship. The idea was this, that we rule. Don't tell us don't tell us what to think. Don't tell us what to do. Don't tell us how to worship. So when things begin to happen in your life, guess what God's trying to do? Trying to wake you up to reality. See, I was interested. Me and my wife just celebrated 40 years. That's a blessing.
Amen.
Now we're working on 41. My mom and dad, they were married 65 years. And my mom passed away October 21st.
He's going on 20.
I'll never forget that. I will never forget that. You know it turned my daddy's world upside down? See, we're not going to be here forever. What we do in the matter of holiness toward God will determine, I'll put this, toward holiness toward God, like I said this, it's going to determine the destiny of this church. Are y'all following me? Don't. My desire is to see this church be around for a long, long time. Look at verse number 32, and I've got about 5 minutes. Can a maid forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire? How many of you ladies remember when you were married, that beautiful dress you had? You remember that? Can you forget that? Well, I remember when Tawana was... See, I still remember Sam's wedding dress. It wasn't like Tawana's. Sam's had red on it. I think she was trying to get Alabama colors on there, but anyway. But it was white, had some red on it, and this. But I'm going to tell you something else. When I thought about Tawana when she was... I couldn't tell you who was at the wedding, but I could tell you who was coming down the aisle. Mm-hmm. I still remember seeing her come down the aisle in that wonderful white dress. Can a bride forget her dress? Mm-mm. How special that was? Let me ask you this, and we're thinking about this. As a bride that can't forget her dress or her ornaments, how can you forget how good God has been to you?
Amen.
Man. Can a maid forget her ornaments, or a bride her attire? Yet my people have forgotten me days without number. They ceased to care. That word forgotten is out of the mind, ignored. And just because someone acts churchy doesn't mean that God is on the mind.
That's right.
Are you following me? I thought about that. It was, and that's as far as I'm going to be able to go today. But see, we've been in chapter 2. And I haven't got on chapter 3. Do you know how many chapters that there is in Jeremiah? If you're talking about 31, 34 chapters, you're going to say, preacher, how are you going to get through that? We will. We'll get through that unless God changes my mind. I can't forget what God has done to me and done for me. But just because a person is churchy doesn't mean that God is on his mind. Sometimes we get in this is kind of in that same mentality. Sometimes what happens is we get our mind focused on what someone else thinks. I'll tell you what we ought to do is quit worrying about what someone thinks. We need to start thinking about what God thinks. A lot of churches, they've been so good. It was interesting, and I said this when I remember as a kid, and we did the Lord's Supper. Did you know that as a kid, I just did it because I was never told anything about it? That's a sad commentary. And a lot of people go to church, God is not on their mind. It's just what we do. Mm-hmm. Never think. You ever think about that when you come in, just to sit down a little bit, think about how good God has been to you? When you were singing that crown and the many crowns and those songs right there, I couldn't sing for the meditation I had about what he's done for me and who he is. The words just couldn't come out. My throat's giving me more and more problems, and that comes with that. But that doesn't mean that singing can't come from the heart.
That's right.
Don't ever forget. Don't be like he said, don't be where you forget days without numbers. Because if you forget God today, guess what? Tomorrow will come, you forget him tomorrow. Thursday will come. So I'll tell you what, this is what we need to be aware of is this. That when the troubles come, don't focus on the troubles. It's like this, when you go to bed, don't count the sheep. You ever heard this one? There was a mattress company, and you get, what is it? Serta, and it had how many nights? The sheep, you're supposed to count the sheep. I don't know where that comes from. I don't count any sheep. I don't even think about sheep. But you count the sheep. Start thinking about the shepherd.
That's right.
You get that? Come in and, what we're going to have for lunch today? Start thinking about the shepherd and how he's taking care of you. Don't be like the just forgot him. Because if you forget him Tuesday, you'll forget him Wednesday. Then you forget him Thursday. Because everything will be going good. And then come Friday, devastation will happen. And then you'll want to call out to him and wonder, where is he? Mm-hmm. It's like this. There was, and I don't remember where it was, I think it's in Proverbs. You don't think about God. See how long that goes? And when troubles come, he'll laugh at your calamity. Mm-hmm. You remember that, Brother Jerry? You remember that? He'll laugh at your calamity. That seems kind of cruel. You ever, I've got to say this one thing. Put yourself in God's position. Mm-hmm. Please do this. You ever had someone, the only time they look for you, getting attention from you or something from you is when they need something? And then when they don't need anything, they could put you off to the side.
Mm-hmm.
You do that pretty soon, you guess what you're going to say? Go find your help somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people do this. I'm not saying we shouldn't help people, but I've seen people do this. They'll show up at church and they expect the church to bail them out simply because they're good people. I've got no reason, I've got nothing wrong with helping people. But the ones that come in there and say, what you need to do is just get in church, hear God's word. Get their few bucks and then they're off again. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
Days are coming. Hard days are coming. By the way, brother, we've had it too easy. As a nation, we have had it too easy.
Mm-hmm.
We've had it so easy. Father, I thank you for this time.